Guys, welcome back to the AJ Analysis channel, where today we have our first Premier League coverage of the season. Of course, Manchester City's 3-0 win over Burnley on the opening night. Today we are going to be looking at how Vincent Kompany and Burnley genuinely caused some problems for Manchester City early on, but how, as always, Pep Guardiola was able to find these solutions. So let's just get the tactics board up on screen and get straight into it. And quite quickly in the game, the theme was established. Manchester City, quite early on, moved to that same structure from last season, using a back three like this, with Rico Lewis inverting into midfield alongside Rodri, creating this 3-2-4-1 system. However, early on, Burnley had a counter to this, a way of pressing, and you can probably see it already just by looking at their formation. They pressed in what was often a 5, 2 and a 3. So the two Burnley wingers would come narrower onto the Manchester City back three like this. The two midfielders, in Cullen and Sander Berge, would push up onto the Manchester City double pivot in a really aggressive man-to-man manner in these areas. The wing-backs were on the Manchester City wingers like this, and then the two spare centre-backs, either side of the middle centre-back, would go man-for-man with the two Manchester City 3/8s. Wherever they roamed onto the pitch, Burnley were following them man-to-man in pretty much every single zone of the pitch, not allowing Manchester City to play out from the back. And as a result, in the early stages, Burnley did get some chances where they were winning the ball back in these areas and then looking to get at City and hurt them, and it was genuinely very effective. However, the problem for Vincent Kompany and his tactical approach was that he was up against Pep Guardiola, who seems to have a solution to pretty much every single problem. And one thing which Burnley didn't consider was the effectiveness of Ederson. And basically the problem for Burnley was that when you have a goalkeeper like Ederson, who is this good with the ball at his feet, you almost can't go man for man. He's almost an extra outfield player. And that is literally how he played in this game. Because what we saw was, as a result of him not being pressed, he really took his time on the ball, and Burnley's forwards would be tied up by the Manchester City defenders. Ederson is literally, at times, just going to walk forward with the ball. He's just going to casually stroll his way up the pitch. He's not really, he's not really being challenged. He's strolling into the defence. This now creates a problem for Burnley, because obviously as a result, Akanji and Nathan Ake split a little bit wider. But now you have a problem, because now Ederson is carrying the ball forward. You know he's very capable of passing, but how do you apply pressure to him without freeing up someone else? And this is where problems started to occur. For example, the striker would be on Akanji. He would try and curve his run to kind of shadow press Akanji whilst also applying pressure to Ederson. But the problem is, City are very good at playing bounce passes like this into midfield, and now they have found a way through the press. Now Akanji is spare. This is when Manchester City start to hurt teams, because players get drawn out to try and close down the ball. City move the ball well to find the spare man. There's always that spare man somewhere on the pitch thanks to Ederson, and this allowed City to really now start playing through this Burnley press. The other thing we saw was the Manchester City defence actually pretty much became a back three, like full time, but in a slightly different way to what we would expect, because Kyle Walker was now pushing much higher up the pitch, allowing Bernardo Silva to come inside, and Akanji, Ederson and Nathan Ake was the back three. And again, this is going to cause problems for Burnley because they hadn't really allowed for this happening. The striker is now responsible for two men, and Foster, the Burnley left winger, has got a question to answer. Do I go inside on Akanji, or do I drop deep on Kyle Walker? This started to cause problems. However, Manchester City had a problem of their own, because Kevin De Bruyne went off injured. And based on what Guardiola is saying, it looks like it's a recurrence of that one in the Champions League final, and it looks like he's going to be out for some time. So it looks like they rushed him back and got it wrong, basically. But anyway, Kovacic comes into the team, and kind of this is happening as Manchester City are making tactical changes, but this break allowed them to really enhance that. And like I said, it was Kyle Walker pushing forward down the right-hand side, which allowed them to start causing problems. What we also saw when we saw this Kovacic change was a reshuffle off the pack. For example, Rico Lewis was suddenly not inverting into midfield as much. He was now playing as more of a traditional fullback, pushing forward down the left-hand side. We also saw changes in the structure. Kovacic and Bernardo Silva were moved much more central, like this. Foden went to the right wing, Alvarez to the left wing. However, they were playing incredibly narrow, the two wingers. They weren't, hugging the touchline, providing the width in this way. They were coming much more central like this. So now as Manchester City were moving the ball forward, they played with this structure. So before we continue into the video, a quick shout out to today's video sponsor, JerseyFifa.com, the home of all of the greatest football kits. Whether that be the new latest releases or the old classic ones like this, Jersey FIFA has something for everyone, and now you can check it out yourself using the link in the description down below. And also make sure to use code JerseyFifa for 10% off when you order. Now, as City were able to move the ball forward, they did encounter one problem, and that problem was the fact that Ederson can only go so far. Yes, he's a ball-playing goalkeeper, happy to come out of his area and play football, but he can only go so far. He can't, for example, be sitting around the halfway line. So as a result, as City moved up the pitch, they lost that advantage of the spare man, and they lost that ability to build in a back three. Or so you may have thought, but it wasn't the case, because as Ederson went back to his goal and went back to mind his own business, Rodri would now drop into the defence to form the back three, and it's going to ask the same questions of Burnley, because City have still pushed the two fullbacks further forward, which again is asking this question of Foster in his position. He's not too sure where he's meant to be. But also, it allows another change in shape for Manchester City as they progress the ball through the pitch. Bernardo Silva is going to drop deeper in here alongside Kovacic, and now this was the shape in which City looked to pin Burnley back and try and hurt them. This 3-2-4-1 shape, or the 3-box-3 shape. We've got Rodri, Aki and Akanji is the back three, Bernardo Silva and Kovacic is the double pivot. We've then got Rico Lewis providing the width on the left, Kyle Walker doing the same on the right, Phil Foden, Alvarez in the half spaces, Haaland leading the line. Now, this was the shape which City kind of went on to use for the rest of the game. It was really narrow at times, obviously, with Foden and Alvarez being in such central positions. The benefit of playing in this way is that you can get quick connections at certain times, quick circulations of the ball, quick passes firing between each other, especially when you have such technical players. For example, Bernardo Silva, Kovacic, very capable of playing two-touch football, but also capable of carrying the ball forward. You've got Rodri providing passes through the middle as well, and I mean, Rodri was just simply incredible. However, this still wasn't free-flowing City. City still didn't fully get into their groove. Having fullbacks providing the width isn't optimal, because Kyle Walker in a 1-versus-1 situation on the dribble isn't as good as someone like Riyad Mahrez was last season. And the same for Rico Lewis compared to Jack Grealish, it isn't the same. However, whilst it may not have been free-flowing, it was still this structural change which won Manchester City the game. And we can see it if we take a quick look at one of the goals here. I believe this is the second goal. We're going to look at it using Once Video Analyzer Pro. Really good video analysis software. You can check it out using the link in the description down below. If you are a regular on the channel, you will know that I use this all the time. But here we can see some key themes of Manchester City's new structure, the new change to the team. We can see Rodri on the ball here, nice and deep between Akanji and Aki. He's going to play the forward pass. As he done all game long, he was brilliant. But what we've got here, receiving the ball in the pocket, is Phil Foden. We also have Kyle Walker pushing forward to provide the width. And if you remember, if we just go back to it, what we were talking about here, we were saying it asks the question of Foster. Does he follow Kyle Walker? Is he responsible for still being high on Akanji like he was in the opening stages of the game? When Phil Foden drops into this position, whose man is it? Is this for Bayer to come out, or is Vitinho now dropping in? As a result of this confusion, Burnley at times ended up in like a back six like this, almost like a 6-3-1 shape when they were defending. But they were unsure of what they were doing in these areas. And on this particular occasion, for the goal, if we get it back up, we do see a lapse in concentration in this area, but also maybe just some confusion. So Phil Foden's going to receive the ball on the turn. We can see Foster and Vitinho in these areas. Here we see the lack of communication, because as Foden receives the ball, both players go towards Phil Foden. And that, of course, leaves so much room in behind for Kyle Walker to run into. And that's worrying, because Kyle Walker, pretty quick. He is very rapid indeed. So as Phil Foden gets the ball on the turn and plays the pass, we can see that the two Burnley defenders are just nowhere near it. They're an absolute mile off. Kyle Walker is going to race onto this pass. Of course, he can race onto pretty much any pass in the world. It's a lovely little Trivela from Foden, no to find him. Kyle Walker runs forward, finds the ball to Julian Alvarez with a good bit of play. And then Haaland does what Haaland does, a brilliant bit of movement. As everyone else, as we can see if we go back one picture, everyone else is rushing back towards the goal. Haaland here is just starting to make his move towards the ball and dropping away from goal into space. And as a result, when Julian Alvarez picks up the ball just inside the penalty area, Haaland is in a ton of room. He's able to pick the ball up, turn, swivel, put it in the top of the net in half a second. It is absolutely incredible play from Haaland. It's ridiculous play from Haaland, I have to be honest. I don't know what you can do as Burnley to stop that. It's just too good. But yeah, that's how City basically won this game. It's how the tactical changes from Guardiola won this game. But City, like I said, they still weren't free-flowing. It still wasn't perfect football. It wasn't trademark Manchester City for large periods. In fact, I think their biggest threat was probably the long ball, when City would kind of get the ball in these areas and then go backwards a little bit, draw Burnley out onto them like this. Burnley are kind of sensing the opportunity. The ball's gone backwards. Can we squeeze nice and high on the press? Can we hurt them? The problem is you've got Ederson in goal, who is one of the best long passers in the world, and you've got Haaland up front, which, of course, is a pretty decent man to go for. He's quite a big, powerful specimen. So Ederson's going to send the ball long. Haaland's going to challenge for this first ball, and then you've got Foden, Alvarez, and Haaland 3 versus 3 up against the 3 Burnley centre-backs, and it's just a recipe for a long, long day for the Burnley defenders. This didn't actually lead to any of the goals in this particular game, but on another day, it should have. I think if City were maybe a bit deeper into the season, a little bit sharper, they've got those connections on point, I think they would have scored more goals in this game, because this long ball was so threatening. So, yeah, that's basically how Manchester City beat Burnley. That is how the opening game of the Premier League season went. It was a Haaland masterclass. I think he scored with his first touch of the season. He had 2 goals within 9 touches. Efficient Erling Haaland. But also, it really was good from Guardiola to notice what Burnley were doing with their man-to-man approach, and basically to take that to his own advantage, really, to move the Burnley players out of position, cause confusion, and hurt them. So it was brilliant from Guardiola. In terms of company, I think he can be pleased with the way that his team played. Despite the Manchester City constant changes, Burnley was still very, very good in the way that they pressed for large parts of the game. They did offer a threat. They just lacked that last bit of quality. They got into some really, really good positions, but just lacked that Haaland, if you like, basically. That little touch. It would have been interesting, for example, to put Haaland in this Burnley team and see what the score would have been. I think it would have been a lot closer. 3-0 was very harsh on this Burnley side. It did flatter Manchester City a little bit, but they won't care. They've won the first day of the season. They've gone away, a tricky game against Burnley, who I think will be good this season. They've won 3-0 and they've gone, there you go. That's what we are about this year. Even when we're not playing great, we will beat you. So, City, they're going to be there or thereabouts again. That, of course, is all stuff for the future. In terms of the short term, Manchester City won. They will be very, very happy with their result indeed. And I think that's all I've got to say for today's video. Now over to you guys. Get in the comments down below. Let me know what you think of the performance. What did you think of the tactics we saw? Which players impressed? Which players disappointed you? What did you think of the subs? The tactical tweaks in the game, because it really was quite interesting. All of that, let me know in the comments down below. But apart from that, thank you guys for watching. I hope you have enjoyed it. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.